All right, ladies and gentlemen, for our last segment about the pen tool, we're going to talk about the pen tool and shapes. Up until this point, we've been talking about the pen tool in reference to creating paths. Now let's talk about using the pen tool to create and manipulate shapes. So what I want you to do is open a blank document just like before and open it up side by side with this tutorial so you can follow along if you'd like. I've selected my pen tool, and up here in our options bar at the top, I have switched over from path to shape. Notice our options have changed a little bit when we switch from path to shape with our pen tool. I have a fill option, and I'm going to choose something fun for my fill color so that you guys can see it on the screen. I can also pick a stroke color. Remember, stroke means the outline of my shape. I can choose how thick or thin I want that outline to be. I'm not going to put an outline on mine, but you can certainly play around with those. And then I can also specify a specific size, a width and a height, and I can lock those together just like we have done in the past so that it maintains its proportions. Also, I've got some new options over here. So before, when we were talking about shapes, we had what happens when we overlap those shapes and what we want it to do. Now we've got the option for new layer. So every shape that I create, I can put on its own separate layer if I want. I've also got my align options here. I don't have anything on my canvas yet, so that's why those aren't showing up. And then my bring to front, bring forward, bring backward, and so on. All right, so let's start by creating something new. So just like before, I'm going to click and release to start my first anchor point, and then I'm going to decide if I'm going to, for this one, I'm just going to make a simple straight line shape. Notice once I get a couple of anchor points on there, it fills in my shape for me. As I continue to add anchor points, it will continue to fill in. I can also create curves just like before, and it will continue adding to this design. So this kind of looks like a little bit like a sideways rabbit or dog or something, I'm not sure. So I can create custom shapes. Notice, unlike before when it was putting it on the paths layer only and not in my regular layers panel, I now have a separate shape layer that it's created. Okay, so I can continue creating new shapes, and because we had new layers selected, each time I create a new shape, it's going to put it on its own separate layer, which means I can control it separately from everything else. Okay, so I can make my own custom shapes this way very easily. I can also outline things. So let's say, for instance, our vector portraits, we're going to be outlining a lot of things and then filling it in. I could do something like outlining the hair with my pen tool and have it on the shape setting rather than the path setting, and it will kind of fill in the hair for me as we go, as long as I go all the way around and back to a starting point. So I can create my own custom shapes. Let's say I really wanted to save one of my shapes. So let's say I really liked my shape that I had here with my dog, little guy here, and I want to save this because I'm going to use it again. I can right click and I can define custom shape, meaning I can save this shape. So we'll name this doggy, and we'll see where we can find that later. So I can create my own custom shapes with the pen tool. Another neat thing that I can do with the pen tool is we've already discussed shape. So let's go down here to our shape tool, okay, and let's just do a simple polygon. Okay, so I'm going to put a shape on here, okay, and now I can manipulate this shape. So I can change this, okay, if I use my arrow tool and I select my shape, what do I have here? I've got anchor points and segments, which means I can manipulate these things. Using that white arrow, I can change these however I need to. Okay, so I can move them all around and create something completely new, or maybe I just need something similar to that shape, but I just need to readjust it just a little bit. Okay, so I can use my arrow tool to do that. I can also use my pen tool to add to this. Maybe I'm like, okay, I need this shape, but I need another anchor point down here. So I can add an anchor point. I can delete an anchor point if it's got too many. Just like I created this shape all by myself, I can use the already existing shapes in Photoshop and then go in and manipulate them with my arrow and my pen tool to whatever I need them to be. Okay, so I can go in here and I can readjust things however I see fit. So I can create my own custom shapes with my pen tool. I can also manipulate already existing shapes using the pen tool as well. So those are two really cool things that I can do with shapes in the pen tool. In my custom shapes here, so if I switch over to my custom shapes, remember all of our shapes are up here. What's this? This is my little doggy that I just made. Because I saved it as a defined custom shape, it's added it to my little custom shapes menu. I can make as many of these as I want, add them in here, and then I can make them in all various sizes. So I can make great big ones or teeny tiny ones and manipulate them however I see fit. So this could be a really handy thing if I were having to do something where I had to repeat a custom shape over and over and over again. Okay, I could save it here into my little shape menu, and then I would have it to use in the future or to repeat over and over again without having to just duplicate layers. This gives me a little bit more control on my size and my placement doing it this way. Also, don't forget our controls when we're using our pen tool. Okay, so right now we've got our auto add delete on, which means I can automatically add or delete anchor points. Okay, but also don't forget that, so let's select this guy here. Don't forget my quick keys. My control key switches over to my white arrow on the fly so that I can change things if they need readjusted. My alt key, okay, changes to that convert. Okay, so that gives me back my handles or deletes my handles, okay, if I don't need them anymore, or I can add them into a new spot if I want to change things around a little bit. So don't forget about that control key, the alt key, and then if I'm drawing something and I want it to stay in proportion, remember that's my shift key. My shift key will kind of keep everything the same size, whether I'm making it bigger or smaller. That also goes for when I'm working with my shapes. So don't forget about your shift key there too. For this last segment, once you've filled out your handout, what I want you to do for your last exercise, I want you to open a blank document. Just like we've done here, I want you to create 3 custom shapes using the pen tool, and then I want you to open up 3 already created shapes, okay, here with our shapes that are already in Photoshop, and I want you to manipulate them in some kind of way. So you're going to create 3 custom shapes like we did with our little dog here, and remember you're going to right click on those, okay, define custom shape, save those in, okay, make sure you name them so you remember what they are, and then you're going to use your already existing Photoshop shapes, okay, create a couple of shapes, but then I want you to try and use your pen tool and your arrow to manipulate those shapes and create something new with them. You're going to save this document, okay, with your 3 custom shapes and your 3 manipulated Photoshop shapes, upload it into our Box.com Practice 3 pen tool folder so that you have it and I can check your progress. That's all for this. All right, thanks guys.